Welcome to the second video of this series on the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan in Introduction. Previously, we looked at the establisher of the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan, Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Today, we're going to look at the basics of the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan. Who is Akshar and Purushottam? What are the basic principles that disciples of this philosophy understand? And what is the goal for anyone who has taken refuge in this philosophy? And so we begin with the first question: who is Akshar-Purushottam, or what is Akshar-Purushottam? As said before, the establisher of this darshan is Bhagwan Swaminarayan. So on the left here, we see Bhagwan Swaminarayan, or Purushottam, also known as Parabrahm. Bhagwan Swaminarayan in this darshan, in this philosophy, is known to be Supreme God. And next to him is his ideal devotee, Gunatitanand Swami. So on the right side, you can see Gunatitanand Swami, also known as Akshar-Brahm or Akshar-Brahm. And he is known as the ideal devotee or ideal disciple to look up to, as Gunatitanand Swami is at the highest spiritual state, the elevated spiritual state that one should attain. He is also known by disciples in this darshan as the first spiritual successor to Bhagwan Swaminarayan. And so you can see here that you have God on the left side alongside the ideal devotee or disciple for people to look up to, which is Gunatitanand Swami. Now, there are many instances where Bhagwan Swaminarayan throughout his life have revealed that his ideal disciple is Gunatitanand Swami, and a whole video can be made just on this topic. But there are three specific times where he used the word Akshar or Akshardham specifically for Gunatitanand Swami, reserved for Gunatitanand Swami. On January 20th, 1810, when Gunatitanand Swami was initiated into the monastic order, the Sadhu fold, Bhagwan Swaminarayan explained his glory, saying that this is my Akshardham. On March 12th, 1812, when a spiritual hymn, a bhajan, was being played by Kabir Das called Jahan Sadguru Khele Vasant. What does the word Sadguru mean? And so all the disciples asked Bhagwan Swaminarayan. And so Bhagwan Swaminarayan said that the Sadguru is Gunatitanand Swami. I am Supreme God. Right? And he used the word that this is my Akshardham. On March 19th, 1821, while many disciples had many different markings on their forehead called a tilak channel, only one stood out, which was Gunatitanand Swami's. And so Bhagwan Swaminarayan applied the tilak and the channel on Gunatitanand Swami's forehead and said that everyone should follow this from here on forward. This is the religious marking or symbol that everyone should wear. And I applied it on my foremost disciple, Gunatitanand Swami. So these are three of many prasangs that you can read in depth, or we'll be creating videos on them later on. Now, this idea of a disciple with God is nothing new in Hinduism. In Hinduism, this is known as a Bhakta Bhagwan relationship, the relationship between the ideal devotee and God. The ideal devotee, again, serves as a role model for those who take refuge or who accept that principle or that tradition. Because the disciple, the bhakta, the ideal devotee, is the exemplar, right, of how one should offer devotion, what understanding one should have to God. So for example, next to Krishna Bhagwan is Radhika ji. Next to Vishnu Bhagwan is Lakshmi ji. Next to Ram Bhagwan is Sita ji and Hanuman ji. Next to Shiv Bhagwan is Parvati ji. In the same way, next to Purushottam Bhagwan is Akshar. Next to Bhagwan Swaminarayan is Gunatitanand Swami. And so this tradition is very apparent in many mandirs or Hindu temples around the world. The idea of God with the ideal devotee as an exemplar to show aspirants how one should offer devotion to God. Now, for those specifically in the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan, what's the purpose, right, of accepting this philosophy and theological understanding? Well, it is moksha. Right? For any Hindu, moksha means ultimate liberation. In Hinduism, the concept is where one goes, one's soul, Atma, is in a cycle of births and deaths and rebirths. And the goal for many Hindus is to come out of this cycle, which is known as moksha. However, attaining a higher spiritual state, right, having ultimate liberation, right, through having an elevated spiritual state is also known as mukti. And so this is a goal for many Hindus. And so how does one attain moksha in the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan? Bhagwan Swaminarayan says in Shikshapatri, verse 116, as well as His Holiness Mahant Swami Maharaj in a scripture called the Satsang Diksha, verse 116, which we'll look at later on, about how one attains moksha, liberation. And it says, identify one's Atma or soul, which is distinct from the three bodies, which is known as Thul, Shukshma, Karan, the physical, psychological, and causal bodies, as Brahmarup. This is a key word, Brahmarup. Brahma, as we looked before, is Akshar, is Gunatitan Swami, is that elevated spiritual state, right? And the Rup is to be like, to have a form like. And so the first part is for one to attain mukti or moksha, right? One has to have that full understanding and identification that one's soul is at that is Brahmarup, is like Akshar, right? Has the qualities and virtues like Akshar, like the ideal devotee. And the second part of this is to offer upasana, which is faithful devotion, coupled with the correct understanding, to Parabrahm, or Supreme God. To offer that devotion, that faithful devotion, while understanding God's greatness and worshiping God. His Holiness Mahant Swami Maharaj puts this in a very simple mantra. He says, Aksharam aham Purushottam dasosmi. That the ultimate goal is to recognize and realize that I am Akshar, being Akshar, I am Purushottam's servant. I am God's servant. I am a worshiper, right? Humble worshiper of God. Now, we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but one can never be Akshar. One can never be Brahm. However, one can be like Brahm, acquire the virtues like Brahm, be at the elevated state like Brahm, like Akshar, right? And worship God. And so now the question is, how does someone attain this purpose in life, this goal in life? How does someone attain this mukti or moksha? And so Bhagwan Swaminarayan laid out the four cardinal virtues, you could call it, called ekantik dharma. Dharma, which is righteous living according to one's duties, righteousness, observance of moral and religious codes and vows. Gnan, spiritual knowledge, right? The knowledge of one being the Atma, the soul, and not the body. Vairagya, which is detachment from worldly pleasures. And bhakti, unconditional and selfless love and devotion to God. These are the four virtues, dharma, gnan, vairagya, and bhakti, as someone should cultivate in their life. And by doing so and acquiring many more virtues and whatnot, one can attain a state like Akshar. However, this is only possible due to one reason. And this is a key aspect of the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan. Through the profound association with God's ekantik bhakt, God's ideal devotee, or through the association of Akshar or Akshar Brahm. Right? The only way that one can firmly establish, right, in these four cardinal virtues into their life, to acquire the virtues and the qualities like Akshar, is only when one associates with Akshar. Right? It's a very simple line of logic, very simple logic, that when you associate someone with at that spiritual state and develop qualities, you can develop a similar elevated spiritual state as they have. And so the crux of the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan is to understand, right, God's glory, God's greatness, and whatnot through the association of the Akshar Brahm Guru. The Akshar Brahm Guru, right, is the present manifestation of the ideal devotee, of Akshar Brahm or Akshar. The Akshar Brahm Guru is the vessel, right, that can give someone moksha or mukti, because in the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan, it is believed that the Akshar Brahm Guru has God within them. And because of that, they're able to be a vessel to give liberation to souls. And so it is through the association of word, thought, and deed with the Akshar Brahm Guru, the one who is already at that elevated state. And by doing so, one can attain those four virtues and many more virtues and develop the qualities of Akshar Brahm to be worthy to worship Purushottam. We'll talk more about this, of course, later. And so, again, this is the crux, that by taking refuge in the Akshar Brahm Guru, following the words of the Akshar Brahm Guru, it enables one to attain all objectives in life and experience the bliss of God. Attain all objectives, whether it be Brahma Vidya, acquiring virtues, acquiring Krupa, whatnot. It enables one to attain all the objectives, even dharma, arth, kam, and moksha, simply by taking refuge and following the words of the manifest Guru, the Akshar Brahm Guru, the one who is already at that highest spiritual state. So in summary, right, this is the crux of the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan. If you don't remember anything else, this is the main thing, that the goal is to be like Akshar, to attain the status, the highest spiritual state possible, to become like the ideal devotee, and worship Purushottam, Supreme God, to worship God, understanding God's greatness and whatnot, with servitude, right, with humility. And this is only by the association of either God himself or, today, through the Akshar Brahm Guru, by associating with the Akshar Brahm Guru, the Guru who is Akshar, the Guru who is the ideal devotee, who is the highest spiritual state. And by associating with such a Guru through words, thoughts, and deeds, one will acquire all the virtues and qualities of Akshar to be worthy of worshipping Purushottam, both in this birth and post-mortem, when they pass away and attain moksha. So this is the crux, this is a summary of the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan. We're going to take a step back in the next video and talk about the Darshana tradition, the Darshanic system, and look at where does the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan, this philosophy, fit within the greater Hindu philosophical realm. It may seem very, we won't be able to cover everything about Hinduism and Hindu philosophy because it's so grand and so, detailed. But we will make an attempt at looking at the basics of some traditions, and we'll look at how the Akshar-Purushottam Darshan, this philosophy that Bhagwan Swaminarayan established, fits within all these different traditions. So we'll see you next time. Jai Swaminarayan.